Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. It's wonderful to be here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. For the listeners who are not as familiar with your work, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
I describe myself as a coach for health and wellness for actors. I'm a coach, public speaker, actor. Try to be decent all-around human being.
That's good. That's good. I like that overall. Okay, that's great.
Gotta have goals.
Yeah, of course. So I want to start tapping into that, but let's back up a little bit. So you initially went to school for sociology. I'm in Boston. I noticed that you went to school at Tufts, so it's right.
I did go Jumbos.
Yeah, right around I'm actually going to be there. And it's a separate thing. I'm going to be there in a few days speaking to a class about something a little bit different. But how was that journey like? So you went to school for sociology. What was it then that made you decide, I want to get into acting and become an actor?
Well, I'm actually going to back you up because I originally went to school for acting.
Ah, okay. So there was even... I did. Before then.
So I'm gonna flip you around a little bit.
Okay.
So I was one of those kids starting from age 9, knew I wanted to be an actor, and It wasn't a question. I just, that was all I did. I was in classes and every community theater show and sang in the choir and everything my mother would let me do. I was doing. I was acting.
Yeah.
In Chicago.
Okay.
And then I went to Cincinnati Conservatory. And I was doing the BFA program in full speed ahead. And then I dropped out and I actually just went and I did professional theater for several years in South Florida.
Okay.
And I crashed and burned. I did everything wrong. I was very unhappy. I was lonely. I was fat. I was broken out. I was a hot mess. My career was going pretty well. I was working, but I was not happy. And I was like, what is going wrong? I'm doing everything I always thought I wanted as my dream to be a working actor in the musical theater, and I'm miserable. So that's actually when I took a time out and decided to go back to school and get a degree in sociology.
Okay.
And that's when I did go to Boston. I went to Tufts.
Okay.
And I did everything but acting at that point because
Gotcha.
I was like, I got to reboot here.
Yeah.
Something's not working. And that was my journey to getting my act together again personally, because I had just worked on myself as an actor. I hadn't worked on the rest of me as a person. So going back to school, getting a degree, I worked in radio, and then I worked in Hollywood for a while, in the business side of things, trying to have a more normal life. That Hollywood's anything but normal.
Yeah.
And that, so that when I did end up coming back to acting after about 10 years, I had a totally different perspective and I had learned so much. I also got a coaching certification. I mentored with Dave Asprey, who's now become the Bulletproof guy. So learning about health and my own journey, and by doing everything wrong, when I came back to acting, which I do work professionally as an actor now, primarily in theater. I was saying, wait a second, I didn't know any of this stuff. So I wish I had a book when I was coming up to figure out how to do it right and not be such a hot mess. And nobody has written this book. So Maya Angelou says, if there's a book you want to read and no one wrote it, you got to be the one to write it. So I took everything that I learned going back to school, going back to, quote, regular school, not acting school, and all the mistakes I had made as an actor, all the health information I had gathered through my health journey and from being certified as a coach, working with clients, put it all together and wrote the book that I wish that I had had when I started out as an actor. Mm-hmm. And that's what became The Resilient Actor. Mm. And now it's a book, and it's an audiobook, and the workbook's coming out in February. So I'm really excited about that. It's a workbook and planner specifically for actors' health and wellness. And I'm working with clients and teaching people what I wish I had known all along. Excellent.
Okay, so Resilient Actor. So let's talk about that. What specifically do you wish you had known? And I have a pretty strong indication of this because I also went to the theater, like went up through the theater school ranking, and other than your craft, they don't teach you anything else. But I'm curious, especially on your side as an actor who then went back to school, what is it that you wish you had known and are doing better now than what you didn't do years ago coming out of conservatory?
Yeah, absolutely. The conservatory is great with training and how to build a resume and how to sing a song and how to act a song and all those things. And only now is there starting to be an awareness, having spoken I'm working with a lot of universities and students and professors who are all coming to this awareness that it needs to be much more holistic. Mm-hmm. And in order to have longevity in this career, you have to treat yourself like an athlete. You have to treat yourself like you are the product. You are the instrument. And there needs to be a lot more balance, a lot more. You have to be healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically. Take care of your voice, take care of your instrument. But there's a lot. There's a balance that's required that no one ever talked about. It was just about going to the audition and nailing the audition and building your resume and going to Broadway. And one of the biggest things that I think I learned is that in order to be successful, you have to be more than an actor. Mm-hmm. And it's not, being a more balanced human being, having a foundation, having a grounding, not having all your eggs in the acting basket. Mm-hmm. Because that way, when your career isn't going as well as you'd like and you're not booking the gigs, or that job comes to an end, or it's not a great job, or God forbid you get fired or whatever, that you're not like, now what? Right. So the more that you can have relationships outside of the theater or the screen, or, have relationships with people who aren't in the business, have activities that aren't in the business, that helps a lot, which is with being a well-rounded human. Mm-hmm. It also allows you to bring more to your acting. When you are working, you're a lot more rich and interesting as a performer, but also just as a successful human being, not putting all your eggs in that one basket.
Yeah. So on that part of it, I know that coming out of, let's say, a conservatory, especially if somebody who is a little bit on the younger side, and let's say they're listening to this and they're thinking, yeah, that's a great idea, but I need to throw more of myself into my acting career so that I can at least get established enough and then have the luxury of not putting all my eggs in one basket. How would you cater your advice to somebody who is fresh, coming out, and has that hunger and the energy, and maybe doesn't think that they can sacrifice their acting time for diversification?
Right. Well, I'm not asking them to spend 5 minutes a day on their craft and nothing else. Mm-hmm. But it does mean have some healthy habits in place that are, just an hour a day that involve something that besides acting. So you're going to yoga, you're taking walks, you're socializing with healthy people who are not in the industry. Whatever your day job is, that can be something that is healthy and builds you up as a human being. It doesn't have to be all black and white. Sure. That you either are acting all the time and nothing else, and just theater oozing out of your pores. And I do remember those days. Nor do you have to be in denial that you're an actor and that it's important and that it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But taking a little bit of time each day to try to stay rounded and have other interests and skills and grounding activities.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So in your journey, so you mentioned that you've studied with Dave Asprey. How did you hear about what Dave Asprey was doing with Bulletproof and decide that was what you wanted to focus on?
Well, I'm what you call an early adopter.
Yeah.
I found his stuff online when I was going through the internet rabbit holes before he had written any books. He was still blogging. He had a little podcast with this dude that sounded kind of like a Wayne and Garth podcast in somebody's basement. So this was, I don't know, like 6 years ago. So I was secretly putting butter in my coffee and not telling anybody because everyone thought it was so weird.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this a long time. And I just happened to come across his blogs, and this is before keto was in and before low carb was in, and it just seemed it was so backwards, but what I had been doing wasn't working. So why not try what shouldn't work? Maybe that'll work. And then I ended up losing a bunch of weight and getting my mental clarity back, and it worked. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess, it's working. And and so I started coaching friends. I had one friend who had been struggling with his weight for years and nothing was working. And so he's like, I'll try anything. And I tried doing a bulletproof plan with him, and he lost 80 pounds.
Wow. And
he said, you know what, if they ever have a coaching program, you should be a coach. You're really good at this. And I said, you know what? If Dave Asprey ever starts a coaching program, I'll be the first one in line. And he did, and I did. So I was actually in the first class ever. I was the first, I think, 50 people who were ever certified as a bulletproof coach. And it was a deep dive into nutrition, exercise, supplementation, stress management, all of it. Some of it was kind of out there, some of it very practical, regular stuff, and biohacking, and it was, that's my geek zone. That's where I really enjoy geeking out on all that stuff. Yeah. And it's allowed me to come to help actors and my clients on a deeper level. So I can help them with the things that actors deal with, the rejection, the mindset, the keeping your confidence up during auditions and all that kind of stuff. But we can also really work on the life coaching stuff and the health stuff and just dealing with sugar and health and energy and mental clarity and go to another level with that stuff. Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about on the health side of it. I'm familiar with Dave's with Dave and Bulletproof, and have been kind of similar to you, kind of just stumbled into his work and then tried a lot of different things to improve my mental health and all that and clarity. In your own experience, what were some of the far out things that you read? You're like, this is so bizarre, it's never going to work, but ultimately worked really well.
I think the biggest thing that seems totally counterintuitive to everything we ever learned was eating more fat. Fat was the enemy. We were told sugar was not that bad, carbs were not that bad. Fat was the enemy. Fat makes you fat. Right. And fat clogs your arteries and all that. So accepting that premise was a tough one. That fat is actually good for you. Of course, there's different kinds of fat. I'm not talking about we're not talking about eating French fries and oxidized oils and things like that, but healthy fat, and including some saturated fat. That actually controls cravings, leads to satiety, and that was the biggest thing for helping me avoid the sugar. And sugar is one of the things that really kicks my butt and makes me depressed and crazy and makes me want to eat all the sugar in the whole world. And I know a lot of people are like that. Yeah. So by eating enough fat, your brain is made primarily of fat. And also then you get the energy, but it also keeps you satisfied. So you're staying away from a lot of the crappy food.